Good morning. This time I would like everybody to please stand and the Pledge of Allegiance with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. My name is Frank Chasney. I'm the president of the West Haven Veterans Museum and Learning Center. Can you hear me back there? Okay. We feature the 102nd Infantry Regiment. I would like to welcome everybody today as we celebrate Veterans Day. Today we're giving special recognition to the veterans of the West Haven who have served over the past 100 years in celebration of West Haven's Centennial. At this time, I would like to introduce Russell Armstead, who is Deputy Medical Director of the West Haven VA Medical Center. Mr. Armstead joined the VA in 2011 after serving 21 years active service in the Army. He is a combat veteran who was awarded 2 Bronze Stars for exemplary achievement in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Welcome, Mr. Armstead. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chasney. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. All right. Good morning. As Mr. Chasney mentioned, my name is Russell Armstead. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the VA Connecticut Healthcare System. And it's my great pleasure to speak with you all this morning. What I want to do is 2 things this morning. I want to go over just a little bit of brief history about the VA Connecticut healthcare system, and then I want to deviate from my prepared remarks and just tell you a little bit from my heart what Veterans Day means to me. So I'll start with a little bit of history of the VA Connecticut healthcare system. So the site of the VA Connecticut healthcare system in West Haven was formerly known as Lyon Park. In 1909, it was converted to treat tuberculosis patients and served as an overflow site for what is now Yale New Haven Hospital. In 1918, the site was leased by the Army and turned into a 650-bed facility to treat tuberculosis patients. It was known then as the U.S. Army General Hospital No. 16. At the conclusion of World War II, the state of Connecticut needed more facilities to continue to care for veterans. In 1948, the site was purchased by the United States government to build what would later become the West Haven VA Medical Center. Groundbreaking occurred in 1950 and the hospital opened in 1953. Many of the original buildings still remain in use today. I'm frequently in and out of these buildings, so it's very old infrastructure. In 1995, the 2 VA facilities, one in West Haven and one in Newington, merged to form the VA Connecticut healthcare system. Today, VA Connecticut healthcare system is a proud member of the community, 58,000 enrolled veterans, over 3,000 employees, and an annual operating budget of $850 million a year. So the VA Connecticut healthcare system is a true legacy for veterans for years to come. Now I'm going to transition a little bit into some of my own personal thoughts and meaning about Veterans Day. So I grew up in the Midwestern part of the United States, Southern Illinois. Very rough area of the country. We were very poor growing up, but I think my saving grace was a lot of participation, active participation in the Boy Scouts of America, and I read a lot of books in my local library. So I spent a copious amount of time in my local library. I probably read half of the books in our library. So between those two activities, they really kind of insulated me as to what was going on around me. I mean, if you can imagine, vicariously, I was able to travel through those books all over the world. So it really kind of worked together to unlock my imagination as a child. And so by the time I was 19 years old, all of these things that I'm reading and taking in, and all of these different experiences through the Boy Scouts, unlocked my imagination so that all of this stuff is big on the inside of me. So I graduated from high school, and I gave it a year. I could not find good employment that, gave me the dignity that I wanted to be able to take care of myself. And so at age 19, in my mind, I remembered people had left that environment by way of the military. So that was kind of my primary plan. And so I enlisted in the United States Army, active duty, age 19, and off into the world I went. Really didn't have any kind of plan, but I just knew that I wasn't going to stay in that town. I kind of wanted more for my life. So very early on, there was a group of Vietnam veterans who recognized me as a hard worker. I kind of distinguished myself that way because I did not have a plan B. I wasn't going to go back to this town, and so I poured everything that I had into just doing the best job that I could. Hard work and just being honest. So it was about 25, I call them crusty old veterans. I use crusty as a term of endearment. They kind of took me under their wing, and they taught me everything that I know as a man today. So those veterans taught me a brand new set of values. They taught me leadership. They taught me duty, respect, selfless service. We'll come back to selfless service. Honor, integrity, personal courage. Those values became my values, and I used those values to sharpen my critical thinking skills. I used those values to build a successful military career. I used those values to start thinking more strategically about my future. And I'll never forget, I was in the middle of a training exercise. I was a field artilleryman. I was enlisted. And so this was probably 6 months into my enlistment into the Army. And I remember it was in the middle of the night. I had guard duty. I forget what I was guarding, but I'm out there in the middle of the night. There was a huge thunderstorm. The rain was very loud. And I ran into one of these senior leaders, one of these Vietnam veterans, because it was a huge Vietnam veteran that cohort was getting ready to retire and leave the Army, and I was on my way in. So they were mentoring me, a lot of them. So I ran into one of them in the middle of the night. He was a senior leader. He was making his rounds, doing his checks, and he said something to me. So he put his finger in my chest and he said, "Armstead, you got what it takes to be successful." Now me, 19 years old, didn't know anything about anything. I had never heard those words before. He was very sincere in how he communicated that, so I knew he was being honest and truthful in assessing me. And so he went on to say, when you get ready to leave the Army, you have a full Army career in front of you, and you're just starting out. But whenever you get ready to leave, make sure you have a good plan. And he said, your plan needs to include, you need to complete your education, and you need to make sure that you choose an industry target before you transition from the Army back to the civilian sector. Never forgot it. Now, it was raining so hard that I think we probably had to elevate our voices over that to just hear each other. But he was so sincere, and I took that, right? And those words, and this was my first sergeant, those words carried me through basically a 21-year active duty United States Army career. So over those 21 years, I deployed to combat a couple of times. I went to Iraq, I went to Afghanistan, earned a couple of Bronze Stars. I served on some very elite teams. 195 countries on the globe. I've probably been to 90. My wife's count is, I think, 91. And so, and she was with me for some of that. And so I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about myself. And I learned a lot about just being a veteran and how great our country is. So I would say to you that, every day, men and women from across our country volunteer selflessly to protect our individual freedom and our great country. And so I would boil it down to this: selfless service. That is what Veterans Day means to me. Thank you for the opportunity to share this morning and be amongst you this morning to share some of my story and some of the history of the VA Connecticut healthcare system. Again, my name is Russell Armstead. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for VA Connecticut healthcare system. I've been with the Department of Veterans Affairs for about 12 years. After I transitioned from the Army, healthcare was the industry that I chose as my target. I had an opportunity at the Department of Defense at an Army medical center. So I worked with them for about 1.5 years. And then from there, I had an opportunity to work with in the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I've been with the Department of Veterans Affairs ever since. So I would say again, selfless service is what Veterans Day means to me, and I thank you again for the opportunity to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, that was wonderful. At this time, I am proud to introduce Beth Fabo. Beth is a Commissioner of Human Resources for the City of West Haven. Beth has held many positions in the years working for the city. Beth was instrumental in establishing this museum in this space and has been a staunch supporter of veterans. Beth?
Thank you and good morning. The City of West Haven is rich in its appreciation of veterans, not only in embracing and recognizing their sacrifices, but with the very nature of the tangible structures that bring homage to their dedication, service, and ultimate sacrifice. There are various plaques along the walkway at the beach by Bradley Point that signify the invasion of the British forces under the command of Brigadier General Garth on July 5th, 1779. It was Thomas Paynter, who is on our city logo, who first saw the Armada approaching the harbor. William Campbell, who was a British officer, his monument is located up on Prudence Street. The marker has the words, Adjutant William Campbell fell during the British invasion of New Haven, July 5th, 1779. Blessed are the merciful. William Campbell saved the life of Reverend Williston from the Congregational Church on the Green. Reverend Williston was fleeing the British Army carrying documents and broke his leg while doing so. The British soldiers were ready, to basically put a bayonet through him. And William Campbell stopped it, told them to take the individual into their quarters and heal the leg, or at least set the leg. That show of compassion has given us, meaning the city of West Haven, the distinction of being the only town in the United States of America whose name for their main thoroughfare is named for an enemy officer. The Doughboy on the West Haven Historic Green signifies the city's involvement in World War I. The bronze plaque indicates those West Haven residents who paid the ultimate sacrifice during that war. Armistice Day is celebrated on November 11th to commemorate the day that World War I allies signed an agreement with Germany to end the fighting. The agreement was signed by German, French, and British representatives at 5 a.m. on the morning of November 11th, 1918. The armistice itself began 6 hours later at 11 o'clock. The city of West Haven holds their annual after Memorial Day ceremony at this monument. Wreaths are placed at the base of the monument by various organizations. There are multiple World War II monuments at various locations in the city. Just recently, I received a phone call from a gentleman from the American Legion. He had indicated to me that the Legion was going to sell the building. And they were concerned about the bronze plaques that were in the foyer and what would happen to them. He asked that I come and see about removing them to preserve that history. We did just that. The 6 plaques indicate those individuals, those West Haven individuals, who served in World War II. There is one plaque that says, dedicated to the men and women of West Haven who served in the armed forces of their country in World War II, and in memory of those who made the supreme sacrifice. These plaques right now are located in the second floor meeting room, named after Harriet North. I certainly would encourage that everybody please go and read the names on these plaques. It is a virtual who's who of West Haven from the 1940s. There are 2 other monuments dedicated to World War II. One is located at the entrance of Painter Park. The granite monument features 3 large blocks atop a square base, capped with a sphere. The monument reads, dedicated to the valiant men and women who gloriously served our country in the armed forces of America. Let us not forget their sacrifices. The second monument was placed on the side grounds of First Avenue School toward Dana Street on First Avenue. This monument reads, First Avenue Honor Roll, dedicated to the men of the United States Armed Forces who gave their lives in World War II so that democracy might live. It was dedicated on April 12, 1950. It was later moved in the 1980s to the Savin Rock Beach Boardwalk after the school closed and turned into a condominium. The Soderman flagpole and the Black Granite Memorial is located at Bradley Point. The Soderman flagpole is the iconic flagpole in the city of West Haven. It was dedicated on July 1st, 1984, 4 years after his death. It was 24 years later, while enhancing the Walk of Honor, that the granite memorial was placed depicting the story of Private First Class Soderman's heroism and presentation of the Medal of Honor by President Truman. Each year at the brick dedication ceremony and also at the September 11th ceremony, the Veterans Day ceremony and Pearl Harbor ceremony, an oversized ceremonial flag is ushered in and placed on this flagpole to recognize this special day. The West Haven Elks also holds each year a ceremony on July 4th at this flagpole honoring William Soderman. The Korean Memorial, the Forgotten War, is also located on the Veterans Walk of Honor. This monument was dedicated during Phase 2 of the brick dedication in 2007. While developing this memorial, I was notified by Swan Monuments that there were 2 locations in which we could buy the black granite, one being China and the other being Zimbabwe. Due to China's involvement during this conflict, I soon realized that we could only go to Zimbabwe for this granite. The shrubs that surround the monument are Rose of Sharon, which produce a hibiscus flower known as the Korean rose, and is the national flower of South Korea. The Vietnam Memorial, again, which is located on the Veterans Walk of Honor. This memorial consists of 3 black panels of granite with 282 names of local residents who served during the Vietnam War. There are 6 names with gold stars signifying that they were killed in action. All gave some gave all. The memorial was dedicated on November 11th, 2003. William Benson, who donates so much of his time to this museum, was one of the original committee members for that memorial. Thank you, Bill. It is the hope of the city. It is the hope of the city to add an additional panel to accommodate additional names. The Lone Sailor was dedicated by Mr. Martin DeGran and dedicated by the city on August 6, 2000. It stands in Old Grove Park looking out over the water, measuring 7 feet in height. The statue represents all the men and women of the sea services and pays tribute to the West Haven's long seafaring history. Presently, there are 18 Lone Sailor statues around the world. West Haven's Lone Sailor statue was the 3rd dedicated in the world. The original statue is in Washington, D.C., at the Naval Memorial, and the 2nd was dedicated in 1997 in Great Lakes, Illinois. On the Walk of Honor at Bradley Point, the approximate 2,800 bricks are individual memorials dedicated to veterans. A few years ago, I bought, with the permission of the family, a gentleman who I knew was a World War II veteran and also a POW, a brick. His family at first was hesitant because he never talked about it. The night that the brick was dedicated, he was there with his children. After the ceremony, he came up to me and said, "West Haven should be very proud. You have taken your most valuable piece of property and dedicated it to the veterans." You see, this gentleman lived in Orange. Sometimes it takes an outsider to remind us of how special our community really is. This museum is a living memorial to all veterans. It is constantly changing. It promotes, supports, and acknowledges their sacrifices that they made for our freedom. I will wrap this up this morning by mentioning one more program that is not in West Haven, but it is called Wreaths Across America. I, along with 8 of my friends, had the honor and privilege a few years back to participate in this program. Each year, on the second Saturday of December, volunteers gather at the Arlington National Cemetery to place wreaths on the graves of the 400,000 veterans. You just show up. You meet at 8 a.m. at the entrance of Arlington and greet the convoy that has made its way from Maine carrying the wreaths. You are asked when placing the wreaths to take the time and read the name and dates on the markers. They indicate to you that many of these grave sites have not been visited in years. And that is a sign of respect, and that is what the instructions were. Make sure you take the time to read their names and the dates on those grave markers. Within 6 hours, the 10,000 volunteers had placed a wreath at each one of the grave sites. This program allows you to purchase a wreath in memory of a loved one and have it placed. The program has become so popular that national cemeteries in various states also lay wreaths. For me, the event was life-changing. And I would encourage anybody to volunteer either at this museum or other veteran organizations because it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. That was very nice. At this time, I would like to introduce Barry Josephs, who is a member of the museum and a Vietnam veteran. He enlisted in the Army Reserves in 1962 and was honorably discharged in 1966 at the rank of captain. Barry serves as an oral surgeon at a base camp in Vietnam. Barry has given speeches here at the museum and his hometown of Woodbridge for the Veterans Day celebrations. Barry?
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, buddy.
So, in just 4 days, it will be Veterans Day. This is a national holiday when America honors and recognizes all of the men and women who served in the armed forces of the United States since the founding of our country. A couple of things about November. We should note that November 10th will be the 246th anniversary of the founding of the United States Marine Corps. Where's my friend I just met, Rick? Where is he? Oh, okay. 77 years ago, on November 20th, 1943, our Marines fought and won the very costly Battle of Tarawa in the Pacific. Those of you who served in Vietnam will remember that 56 years ago in November 1965, at the Ia Drang Valley, the men of the 1st Cavalry Division fought the first large-scale battle of that terrible war. We had 256 KIAs, and sadly, that was only the beginning. Very brief history of Veterans Day. Beth brought us up to the beginning of it, but most states, after World War I, President Woodrow Wilson declared that the holiday would be Armistice Day, and many states held parades and ceremonies as we did today. But after World War II, a veteran by the name of Raymond Weeks promoted the idea of expanding Armistice Day to include the veterans of all the services. President Eisenhower, who you know was the commanding general in Europe during World War II, later got on board. People began calling the holiday Veterans Day, and finally, in 1954, Congress made it official. It's estimated that over 50 million Americans have served in our military over the years. 16 million participated in World War II alone, 1.7 million in Korea, 2.7 in Vietnam, 1.5 million in Iraq, and 800 of our military went to Afghanistan. So 50 million. Just to put that in perspective, I was trying to calculate how many servings of cream chip beef on toast that would have amounted to. I love SOS, but my wife won't make it for me. She says it's too much salt. Of course, she's right. She's always right. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. A few celebrities who were veterans. Anthony Dominic Benedetto was drafted into the Army in 1944 at the age of 18. His 63rd Infantry Division was heavily engaged in the bitter and bloody fighting in Europe during the very cold winter of 1944-45. After the war, Tony Bennett became, and still is, one of the most talented and popular entertainers in American history. Who doesn't love and respect Yogi Berra? Even the Red Sox fans love Yogi. But if you value your life, never, never, never wear a Yankees baseball cap to Fenway Park. Yogi was a gunner's mate on the attack transport USS Bayfield on D-Day at Normandy Beach. 2 months later, during the invasion of southern France in August 1944, Yogi was very slightly wounded by German machine gun fire. Yogi did not apply for the Purple Heart he had earned because he did not want his family back in New Jersey to know that he had been in danger. When Elvis Presley was drafted in 1958, he could have chosen the very, very easy path of serving with a non-combatant entertainment unit. Instead of that, Elvis said, "The Army can do anything it wants with me. I don't want to be different from anybody else." Sergeant Elvis Presley was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division in Germany and honorably fulfilled his military obligation. We remember General Colin Powell, who passed away very recently. I saw in the paper this morning that Henry Velalkic, a 94-year-old World War II veteran from West Haven, died just the other day. May their memories be as a blessing. On August 26, 2021, 13 men and women from our military were killed in action in Afghanistan during the evacuation of the airfield at Kandahar. I am sure you were there. I'm going to read the names of the 11 Marines, the Navy corpsmen, and the Army Staff Sergeant who lost their lives. They were just kids, about 20 years old. The oldest was the Army Staff Sergeant, who was, I think, 24, it said. We remember them on this Veterans Day. Maxton Sloviak, Riley McCullum, Dagan Page, Hunter Lopez, Jared Schmitz, Nicole Gee, Darren Hoover, Kareem Nakui, Johanny Rosario Pichardo, Humberto Sanchez, David Espinosa, Dylan Marola, Ryan Noss. It is my hope that these men and women will be the last Americans to ever die in combat. The DeGrand family has a long and generous history with both the City of New Haven and our museum. It is my pleasure to introduce our museum manager, Arlene DeGrand Painter.
Very nice, Paul.
Thank you, Barry. And I want to thank all of our speakers today. When the museum was asked to take part in the Centennial celebration for the City of West Haven, we felt very honored to do so. We made space to create a display wall, and we have on it over 300 names of local veterans that were submitted either by the veterans themselves or by their family. We would have loved to have listed the name of every veteran from the city of West Haven, but it would have been physically impossible to do. There have been many thousands of veterans from this city who have answered the call to duty, and I urge everyone to visit the Veterans Walk of Honor and the various monuments around the city to get a true sense of all that have served and sacrificed for their country. We must never forget what our veterans have done to ensure our independence and our way of life on Veterans Day and every day. I'd like to thank Russell Armstead from the West Haven VA Medical Center, Beth Sabo from the City of West Haven City Hall, and our Vietnam veteran Barry Josephs for their participation in today's program. We hope that you will spend some time browsing throughout the museum, and we're delighted that you could join us today. We thank you very much, and I wish you all a very happy Veterans Day. Thank you.